She's a manipulative leech who's been stealing from us for years. Melanie's voice cracked like a whip across the silent courtroom. She took out loans in our name. She's unstable, Jason added, as if I were some twitching stranger who had stumbled in from the street. Not his mother. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just stood, reached into the leather folder I'd brought with shaking hands, and handed the judge a notarized affidavit, signed and sealed, with witnesses. He read the first line and froze. His color drained. He looked up, voice tight. No one moves. Close the doors. Gasps echoed from the gallery. A bailiff locked the doors. Melanie's painted-on smile vanished. Jason turned pale, because he knew what it was. It was the beginning of their end. The story started a month ago when my lawyer found something I never would have noticed on my own. It was late in the day. Her office windows were reflecting orange sunlight, casting long shadows across the mahogany table between us. She adjusted her glasses, squinting at a PDF on her screen, then turned to me slowly. Her tone was careful, but I could hear it, a tightness in her voice she couldn't smooth over. "Ruth, did you authorize the sale of your property on 3rd Street? I blinked, confused. "No, that place brings in rental income. It's never even been listed." She clicked something, then swiveled the monitor so I could see. There it was, clear as daylight. A transfer of deed, a sale date, a forged signature. Mine. Jason's name was all over it, acting as my power of attorney, something I had supposedly reactivated 6 months ago during a hospital stay. I hadn't been in the hospital. I hadn't even been sick, but there it was, filed and stamped at the county clerk's office. Like truth, like fact. She leaned forward and said, "This is fraud, Ruth. Serious fraud. Whoever filed this could be looking at felony charges." That's when I stopped breathing. That's when I stopped doubting myself. Because it wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was proof. Jason hadn't just lied. He'd committed a crime. And I had a paper trail to prove it. I left her office with a copy of everything. A flash drive, a folder, and a list of steps we needed to take immediately. First, revoke the old power of attorney, permanently and publicly. Second, file a formal complaint with the county records office. Third, freeze access to my investment accounts before Jason could try anything else. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stood in my hallway, hand resting on the bookshelf my husband built, and stared at the framed photo of Jason as a boy, missing teeth, beaming with pride, holding up a Pinewood Derby car. I whispered aloud, "What happened to you?" But the truth was, I already knew. He and Melanie had tasted control, and they wanted more. Not love, not care, ownership. I began documenting everything. I printed every bank statement. I sent certified letters to revoke all prior legal permissions. I made a quiet appointment at my local bank and told them that if anyone tried to access my trust account, even Jason, they were to alert me immediately. The banker looked uneasy. "But he's your son," she said. I nodded once. "He's also a thief." I don't think she believed me. But it didn't matter. By the time I left the courthouse that morning for the hearing, I had more than enough evidence to crush them. Jason and Melanie thought they were walking into court to win control of my life. But I was about to walk in and show the judge exactly what kind of people they really were. This wasn't just defense anymore. It was offense. It was revenge. And it was just getting started. A few days after my lawyer uncovered the forgery, I was pulling weeds in the little patch of soil near my front porch when Gloria called over the fence. "Ruth, do you have a minute?" Her voice was hushed, almost conspiratorial. I walked over, still wearing my garden gloves, dirt under my fingernails, and a pain blooming deep in my knees. She waved me closer like she didn't want anyone else to hear, even though it was just the two of us on our quiet block. "I didn't want to say anything," she began, pausing. "But I saw your son leaving your house last weekend. Thought you were out of town." I stiffened. I was. Her eyes widened slightly, confirming what she suspected. Then why was he inside? That question hung in the air like a wasp, waiting to sting. I had no answer for her, but my stomach knew before my brain did. Jason had been back. He still had a key. Gloria continued, voice lower. He had that woman with him, his wife. They were inside for a while. I thought maybe you gave them permission, but they were carrying folders and boxes out to their car. Office stuff. I didn't say a word. Just nodded like my neck was a spring, stiff and slow. I thanked her and went back inside, the sun suddenly feeling too hot for early spring. I sat at the kitchen table, where everything had begun, and pulled out my phone. Last year, after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood, I'd installed a basic home camera system. Nothing fancy, just one in the entry hall, one facing the office, and another angled at the back door. I opened the app and started scanning. It didn't take long. There they were. Jason, walking in like he owned the place. Melanie behind him, snapping photos with her phone. He went straight to the drawer where I kept important files. Opened it. Rifled through. Melanie laughed at something, then picked up the envelope labeled Trust Account. I watched myself become a victim, in real time, silent on a screen, as they laid their fingerprints across my life like it was a display shelf in a store they were about to loot. She opened one of my notebooks. Jason took photos of the pages. He photographed my handwriting, like he was building evidence, like he was preparing for war. I recorded everything, downloaded the footage, created a folder labeled Entry Evidence, March 14th. I even zoomed in on the timestamps. Clear, undeniable. That evening, I sent it all to my lawyer with the subject line. They broke in. I have proof. She called within the hour. This is very, very bad for them, she said. And then, more quietly, very good for us. Melanie and Jason didn't know I had cameras. Didn't know Gloria saw them. Didn't know I'd already revoked his authority. They were still playing pretend, still assuming I was too old, too tired, too gentle to fight back. But they were wrong. Every lie they told, every drawer they opened, every step they took deeper into my trust. I documented it all, because revenge doesn't always come in flames and fury. Sometimes it grows slowly, patiently, like a root system under a quiet garden, waiting to bloom. And I was almost ready to show them what I'd been planting. I didn't sleep the night I saw the footage, not out of fear. That part of me was long gone. It was something colder, like a quiet fury humming beneath my skin, keeping me upright when I should have been curled in bed. By morning, I knew I needed someone else in my corner, someone outside the web of what Jason and Melanie thought they controlled. Her name was Ms. Colton, a legal advocate for the elderly. Small office, tucked between a barber shop and a dry cleaner on the edge of downtown. Her business card said, "Preserve your voice. Protect your power." I walked in holding a thick folder filled with timelines, screenshots, notarized forms, and the surveillance footage on a flash drive. She offered me tea. I declined. I wanted nothing warm that day. She listened, didn't interrupt, didn't shift uncomfortably, just took notes, nodded occasionally, asked 2 questions, both direct, both sharp. Do you believe they'd go as far as to have you declared unfit? I didn't blink. I believe they already tried. She nodded once. Then, if you don't do anything, what happens in the next 6 months? I took a breath. They take my home, liquidate my assets, possibly have me put into assisted living under a false medical claim, and they walk away with everything I worked for, everything my husband left behind. She wrote one final thing down, then closed her notebook with a soft snap and looked me dead in the eyes. You're not the first mother they've tried this with, she said, but you might be the first one to fight back. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the matter-of-fact way she said it, but I laughed. A real laugh. The first one in weeks. Not joyful, not light, just relief. Relief at being seen. She offered to review everything with fresh eyes. Not just from a legal perspective, but from a strategic one. Court is about facts, yes, she said, but it's also about credibility. Documentation, yes, but demeanor too. We need to make you untouchable. Not just legally sound, unshakable. I left with a list of steps. Document memory clarity, write daily entries, timestamp handwriting, include personal routines. Secure medical affirmation, letter from my physician verifying cognitive health. Remove Jason as emergency contact from every legal form, medical file, and financial profile. And Miss Colton's words, stop answering their calls. Let silence become your shield. I walked out of her office into the chill of a late March morning and felt something new settle over me. Not anxiety, not fear, readiness. Jason thought I was alone. Melanie thought I was distracted. They saw gray hair and a quiet house and assumed weakness. But now I had an advocate. Now I had structure. Now I had a plan. They still thought I was 2 steps behind. They didn't realize I was circling. And the next time they tried to make a move, I wouldn't just block them. I'd dismantle everything they'd built, one forged lie at a time. I went to the bank. The teller looked nervous when I slid my ID and documents across the glass. I didn't blame her. Most elderly women who walk into a bank mid-morning with a power of attorney revocation, a restraining notice request, and a lawyer on speed dial are usually trying to untangle a mess someone else created. But not me. I was here to take back control before they had the chance to strike again. I'd like to remove all external access to these accounts, I said firmly. Effective immediately, she hesitated. Even Jason Hallberg? He's listed on the... He no longer has permission. He's not even allowed to ask what the balance is. Not 1 penny. I handed her the revocation notice, stamped and filed. Then the letter from my lawyer. Then my ID again, just to make sure. I watched her read it all, her face shifting from polite discomfort to something sharper. She glanced up once. I understand. I'll get the manager. Good. Let them all read it. Let it be on record, on file, burned into the system. Jason Hallberg had no more authority. Not over my money, not over my home, not over me. That afternoon, I reported the forged property sale to the County Fraud Division, filed a notarized affidavit with the Real Estate Commission, and changed every legal password I'd ever had, twice. Then I sat at my dining room table with my lawyer on speaker and drew a thick black line through Jason's name in every document that had once included him. Executor of my will? Gone. Medical proxy? Gone. Emergency contact? Deleted. Power of attorney? Burned. I was erasing him from the blueprint of my life. Every corridor he thought he could sneak down, sealed. That night, the phone rang. I knew it would. I even had my tea ready. Mom? Jason's voice cooed through the line, sugar-dipped and dipped again. Hey, just checking in. Everything okay? Fake concern dripped from every syllable. He'd seen the alerts by now. The frozen access. The emails he couldn't open. The accounts locked without his name. I took a deep breath and said nothing. He tried again. Saw a couple things pop up on the bank portal. Wondered if maybe you hit the wrong buttons or... I hung up. Didn't speak, didn't shout, didn't scream. Just pressed end call, slowly and deliberately, then turned off the ringer and set the phone down. Let him wonder. That silence? It was mine. For years, I had filled every pause in our conversations with explanations, reassurances, apologies he never asked for. But this time, I gave him nothing. No reaction. No confirmation. No weakness. I slept deeply that night, for the first time in months. No dreams. Just peace. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that Jason was pacing the floor, and Melanie was flipping through their shared calendar, asking, "Did she say something to you? Why can't we access anything?" I hoped it haunted them, because this wasn't just protection anymore. This was punishment. Quiet, thorough, legal. And oh, it was only just beginning. I didn't expect her to follow me there. Sunday service had always been my sanctuary, 20 years in that church, through grief, joy, and everything in between. I taught Sunday school, helped at the bake sale, lit candles in memory of my husband every Christmas Eve. But that morning, as I stepped out into the foyer after the benediction, Melanie was waiting. leaning against the bulletin board like she owned the place. She spotted me before I could turn back. "Ruth," she called out brightly, too loudly. "I've been dying to see you." The foyer went still. I didn't answer. She closed the gap in 4 quick steps, designer heels clicking across the linoleum. Her lipstick was perfect. Her smile, plastic. "I just wanted to say how hurt we've been," she began, loud enough for every parishioner lingering by the donation basket to hear. "Jason and I are doing everything we can to support the kids, and to have your support just ripped away like that? It's heartbreaking." I said nothing. But she wasn't finished. "I mean, stealing from your grandchildren's college fund?" she added, eyebrows lifting with just the right blend of shock and wounded pride. I don't know how we explain that to them. Gasps. Audible. A few murmured, "Oh dears." Heads turned. A woman behind me whispered, "She stole from them?" Melanie looked satisfied. She thought she'd won something. I didn't flinch. I just looked her straight in the eyes, calm, steady, and smiled. Because this was the moment I'd been waiting for. She had just accused me. In public. In a house of God. And she'd done it boldly, loudly, with intent. That was libel. That was emotional abuse. That was evidence. I didn't need to defend myself. Not yet. All I needed to do was document it. So I reached into my purse, slowly, and without breaking eye contact, I tapped the voice recorder app on my phone. It had already captured enough. She took a step back. "What are you, recording me?" she asked, tone suddenly sharp. I gave her nothing but silence. Let her stew in it. Let her mind race. My pastor walked over, concern in his eyes. "Is everything all right here?" "Oh yes," I said, my voice smooth as cream. Melanie was just clarifying a few things for the record. "I'll send the church office a copy." I left her there, red-faced, fidgeting, exposed. When I got home, I saved the recording in 3 places. Labeled the file, Church Accusation, March 24th. Then I emailed it to my lawyer and Miss Colton. The reply came back fast. "This is harassment. We now have public verbal defamation to add to the complaint. Good work. Good work." I sat at my kitchen table, hands trembling, not with fear this time, but with the electricity of clarity. This wasn't just a bad marriage or a greedy child. This was coordinated, intentional. They were building a story. But so was I. Mine just had a better ending. And Melanie? She'd just handed me another nail for their coffin. 3 days after the church incident, I opened the front door to check the mail and saw a thick, cream-colored envelope resting on the welcome mat. No return address, just my name, handwritten in that overly polite, almost condescending cursive I recognized instantly. I brought it inside and opened it at the kitchen counter, my tea still steeping behind me. Inside, a copy of a petition, filed by Jason and Melanie, requesting the court declare me mentally unfit to manage my own affairs. They were calling me incompetent, delusional, a risk to my own well-being. And there it was in black ink. They were requesting temporary conservatorship to take control of my finances, my medical decisions, and my estate for her own safety. They had even included 3 witnesses who would allegedly support their claims, one of whom I recognized as Melanie's friend from yoga, the one who couldn't tell parsley from sage. At the bottom, Jason's signature stood bold, shameless, like he was doing me a favor. I didn't cry. I read it 3 times, then set it down neatly, and walked over to the small file cabinet I kept beneath my bookshelf, pulled out a folder labeled Health and Wellness Verified. Inside, at the very top, was a sealed statement from my physician. It had arrived unprompted just a week earlier. He'd written it after our last routine checkup, said he wanted me to have it, just in case anything ever came up. I opened it carefully, smoothing the page. Mrs. Haleberg is cognitively sharp, physically capable, and entirely self-sufficient. I have no medical concerns regarding her ability to make decisions or manage her affairs. Signed, dated, official. I smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. I made a copy of that letter and slipped it into the accordion binder I'd labeled Court Exhibits. Then I scanned it and sent it to Ms. Colton and my lawyer with a simple subject line: preemptive strike. Within the hour, Ms. Colton replied, "This is excellent. We'll file this as a preliminary rebuttal and add it to your defense. Their case just got a lot harder to push through. Well done. Well done." I read the words twice. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but it was a win, a small one, a reminder that I wasn't the frail old woman they were painting in their statements. I was Ruth Halberg, widow, legal secretary, mother of a son who once believed I was too weak to fight back, but not anymore. Later that afternoon, I placed the conservatorship notice back into its envelope and tucked it at the bottom of a drawer beneath spare light bulbs and expired coupons. Let them think I was rattled. Let them think their little stunt had worked. They'd poked a lion in the name of inheritance. But they forgot something critical. Lions don't bark. They pounce. Next location, pre-trial deposition room, following week. The walls were a sickly beige, the kind that made time feel slower. No windows. Just a long rectangular table and 4 people who couldn't stand to look each other in the eye. I sat at one end, upright and still, my lawyer beside me, leafing through a manila folder thick with documentation. Jason sat across from me, forced smile on his face, trying too hard to act unfazed. He greeted me like nothing was wrong. "Hey, Mom, you look good." I didn't respond, because this wasn't brunch. This wasn't church, or the front porch, or a phone call he could hang up on. This was sworn testimony. This was where the pretending ended. The court-appointed mediator began the session with basic introductions. Then it started. Questions, clarifications, dates. My attorney answered most of them with ease, each word surgical and measured. I just sat still, letting them talk, letting the weight of the evidence pile, slowly, brick by brick. Then came the moment she had warned me about. "We'd like to enter into evidence a series of emails," my lawyer said, sliding a clear folder across the table, "between Jason Halberg and Mr. Kelvin Stein, a licensed real estate broker." Jason's face twitched. He tried to keep it neutral, but I saw it, the tiny involuntary pull at his temple, his jaw flexing, a bead of sweat starting just below his sideburn, because he knew exactly what was in those emails. The mediator opened the folder, scanned the printouts, then looked up. These appeared to be regarding the potential sale of a property on 3rd Street, while Ms. Halberg was still listed as sole owner? My lawyer nodded. Correct. These were arranged under a fraudulent assertion of power of attorney. You'll note the timestamps. The emails were from a private account Jason thought I'd never see, forwarded to himself, CC'd to Melanie. Phrases like, "Let's move fast before she notices," and "just get her to sign something with legalese," practically jumped off the page. Jason shifted in his chair. Still, he said nothing, just reached for his water like it might hide the guilt seeping out of his pores. I hadn't said a word the entire session. Not until the mediator asked, "Miss Halberg, do you have anything to add before we continue?" I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I had raised in a rent-controlled apartment with a broken radiator, working double shifts while he slept warm and safe. And now here he was, middle-aged, married, a father himself, stealing from me as if I were some burden to be scraped off his shoes. I folded my hands in front of me. "Yes," I said, "I trusted him once. That's all I'll say." And then I turned back to the mediator, calm as a breeze. "Please, proceed." My lawyer continued laying out the foundation, the footage of Jason and Melanie entering my home without consent. The signed affidavit from the notary who confirmed Jason forged my signature. The document Melanie tried to sneak under my door, the one requesting I just sign for bank approvals, each page another match, and Jason silenced the gasoline. When we left that room, I didn't feel tired. I felt precise, like something inside me had finally clicked into place. The grief, the confusion, the disbelief, all burned down now, ash in the wind. What was left was resolve. They'd come for my future with fake smiles and sharpened pens. But I'd come for their lies with dates, proof, and a fire they never saw coming. And it was only growing. I didn't cry when I got home. Didn't pour a drink. Didn't call Gloria or Miss Colton. I just walked quietly into my bedroom and shut the door behind me. The silence inside was thick, comfortable, like an old sweater. The kind of silence that didn't ask anything from me. The kind I hadn't felt since before Jason and Melanie started circling like vultures. The box was still on the bottom shelf of the closet, where I'd kept it since my husband died. Old photographs, baby shoes, birth announcements yellowed from time. I opened the lid with steady hands. The photo album on top was the thick leather one Jason made me for Mother's Day when he was 13. He used to cut pictures out of the family albums and paste them into new pages, scrawling captions in bubble letters. Me and Mom at the lake. Dad grilling again, lol. I turned each page slowly, the ache in my chest rising like a tide. There he was, Jason at 5, sunburnt and grinning, holding a plastic fishing rod. Jason at 9, wearing a costume I'd sewn by hand for the school play. Jason at 17, cap and gown askew, both arms slung around my shoulders. Back then, he looked at me like I was the whole world. Halfway through the album, I stopped. There was a photo of the three of us, me, Jason, and my husband, taken in the old apartment kitchen just after Jason had gotten his first real job out of college. He had one hand on my shoulder, the other holding a check. He'd paid me back for a student loan I had co-signed, said, "Now it's your turn to relax." I remember thinking, he grew up right. He didn't forget. But he did. Or maybe he didn't forget. Maybe he just stopped caring. I stared at that photo for a long time, the edges curled, the smiles faded, and I whispered, more to myself than anyone, he's gone. Not dead, not missing, but gone. The son I raised, the boy who thanked me, who kissed my cheek every night before bed, who cried when I broke my arm. He was no longer in the man who sat across from me at that deposition. That man wore expensive suits and smiled at me like a poker player. He lied with ease. He sold pieces of me like they were his to claim. And worse, he stood beside a woman who sharpened every knife he used. I closed the album and set it gently back into the box. Then I stood at the mirror across from my bed. I looked older, yes, but not small, not broken. Lines around my eyes, but they were earned. Silver in my hair, but I liked the way it caught the light. My back straightened as I looked at myself. Not the mother, not the victim, not the frail old woman they were trying to make me out to be. Just me, Ruth Halberg, capable, sharp, alive, and very, very done, forgiving what wasn't even sorry. That night, I slept with the window cracked open and no lock on the bedroom door. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. I didn't care if Jason called, didn't care what Melanie posted, didn't care what new lie they crafted. They'd taken the last piece of who I used to think they were. Now all that remained was what I knew. They were frauds. And frauds don't get family. They get consequences. 2 mornings later, I found myself standing in front of the county records building. The same concrete steps I'd walked up countless times back when I worked as a legal secretary now felt different, like I was walking into the last act of a play only I knew the ending to. The woman behind the records desk looked up and smiled politely. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I'd like to pull all filings tied to properties under the name Ruth Halberg, especially anything filed in the last 18 months. She blinked, then nodded, already tapping keys. "You'll need to verify ID." I handed her my license and waited, hands resting calmly on my purse, though inside my fingers were curled so tight around the strap, I could feel my pulse in my knuckles. When the folder was handed over, it felt heavier than it looked. I carried it to the long wooden table in the back corner, the one beneath the old clock that had ticked away hours of my past life spent proofreading contracts. I flipped page after page. Deed transfers, title changes, tax records. Most of it I already knew. Documents tied to the property Jason had sold without my permission. But then I saw it. a line that stopped me cold. Lien placed as collateral for private loan, 242 West Delmar Avenue. That was my home, my current home. Filed 3 months ago, a document bearing my name, only I never signed it. I read every line twice, 3 times. It wasn't a sale, not yet, but Jason had used my house as collateral on a business loan, a sizable one that had already been denied by the lender, thank God. But still, he had tried. He'd listed my property without my knowledge, without my consent, without my signature. I turned to the last page, a signature line, and there it was again. Ruth Halberg. Sloppy. Uneven. Forged. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't desperation. This was criminal. I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone, took clear photographs of every page, sent them to my lawyer and Miss Colton on the spot. The subject line was simple. He tried again, found at records office. Within 10 minutes, my phone buzzed. This crosses a line into criminal fraud. Not just civil court anymore. We're filing a formal motion to involve law enforcement. Ruth, you're doing the right thing. Miss Colton. I held the phone in my lap and let the weight of those words settle. Criminal fraud. Not just family betrayal. Not just stolen money. Now, there was no coming back from this. For them. I returned the folder to the desk and walked out of the records building into the early afternoon light. The wind tugged gently at my coat. The same sun Jason and I used to walk under when he held my hand crossing streets. But those memories didn't hurt anymore. Not in the same way. Because now I knew exactly who I was dealing with. And now I had the final match in my hand. The one that would light everything they built on lies and burn it clean. The courthouse smelled like dust and old paper. I was back in my gray suit, the one I hadn't worn since my husband's funeral, and it fit a little looser now. But somehow, I stood taller. Outside courtroom 3B, I was reviewing documents with my attorney when a clerk approached, papers in hand and a crease between her brows. "Mrs. Halberg," she asked cautiously, "there's been an emergency motion filed against you from the opposing party. Just came in 15 minutes ago." I didn't react, just took the envelope and unfolded it slowly. My lawyer leaned in to read beside me, her voice calm but clipped. "They're requesting an immediate freeze on your assets," she said, claiming erratic behavior and violent outbursts. I let the silence hang a beat longer than needed. Of course. Melanie's final card, filed last minute. No time for review, just scandalous enough to get the judge's attention before I had a chance to respond. I scanned the affidavit, and there it was, her signature beneath a paragraph describing me as unstable and volatile, referencing 3 recent emergency room visits for stress-induced aggression. Fabricated, every word of it. And I had proof. I turned to my lawyer and opened the inner pocket of my binder, sliding out the file I'd labeled Medical Fraud Melanie 2 weeks ago. Inside, copies of hospital logs I had pulled through legal request, each showing Melanie checked in alone, no witness, no doctor observation, no formal report. Just checked in, sat around for an hour, claimed emotional trauma, and left. There were even notes from the attending nurses on 2 occasions. Patient appeared calm, refused evaluation. No visible distress observed. One visit had occurred during the exact time Melanie had posted photos from a wine tasting on social media. Smiling, holding a glass, tagged in a different city entirely. My lawyer chuckled under her breath. "You're holding a grenade," she said. "They're not going to like this." "Good," I said, because I wasn't there to make them comfortable. The judge was already in chambers when the documents were submitted. Within minutes, a bailiff called us inside. Jason and Melanie were already seated at their table, Melanie in pale beige like she thought it made her look innocent. She didn't look at me. Jason did. But briefly. A flicker of something that almost resembled regret or fear. I kept my eyes on the bench. The judge flipped through the emergency motion first, then raised an eyebrow as he turned to our submitted response. He spent nearly a full minute reading in silence. Then, setting the papers down carefully, he looked directly at Melanie. "Mrs. Halberg, I have before me claims of violent behavior filed by you, supported by alleged emergency hospital visits." I also have official hospital documentation that shows those visits were inconsistent, unsubstantiated, and potentially falsified. Melanie's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. He leaned forward. Be advised, falsifying medical claims in court proceedings is a serious offense. If I find these were knowingly fabricated, we will escalate this to criminal review. Jason reached for Melanie's hand. She didn't take it. That was the moment. That exact beat when they realized this wasn't a tug of war anymore. They weren't pulling at me. I was untying the rope around them. And with every document, every affidavit, every lie turned inside out, I was turning their little scheme into something with teeth, sharp ones. The judge didn't rule that day. Not yet, but I saw it in his face. Things had shifted. The benefit of the doubt no longer belonged to them, and for once, they knew it. By the time we entered the main courtroom later that week, word had spread, not just about the financial abuse, not just the fraud, but about me, about the 73-year-old woman who showed up not with drama or shouting, but with documents sharp enough to cut through every lie. People noticed. Even the bailiff gave me a small nod as he opened the doors. Jason and Melanie were already seated, stiff and quiet at the petitioner's table. She wore a dull gray suit this time, her usual glamour stripped down to match the stakes. I walked in slow, deliberate, not out of frailty, but because I wanted every eye in the room to see how steady I was. This wasn't a hearing anymore. It was the reckoning. The judge entered with no ceremony. "Let's proceed," he said flatly. "All evidence submitted will now be formally reviewed for admissibility and relevance to both the conservatorship claim and counterclaims of financial misconduct." Melanie was the first to speak, and she did so loudly. She's a manipulative leech who's been stealing from us for years. Her voice cracked through the courtroom like glass under pressure. She's been draining our accounts, hiding money, creating fake documents. She even turned my children against me. Jason nodded beside her, trying to play stoic. She took out loans in our name. She's unstable. She needs help. We were just trying to protect her from herself. I didn't flinch. I reached slowly into my binder, click, click, and pulled out 3 documents. The first, a notarized affidavit from their own accountant, confirming that no funds had ever been transferred from their accounts to mine. Quite the opposite. In fact, Jason and Melanie had received over $48,000 from my account over 2 years. The second, a statement from the notary who had unknowingly witnessed Jason forging my name, signed, dated, clear as day. And the third, the crown jewel, an affidavit from the real estate agent Jason used to try to list my home as loan collateral. It wasn't just signed, it wasn't just dated, it included emails. Emails between Jason and the agent with phrases like, "She won't notice, just list it under the LLC. We'll say she's confused if anyone asks." It's not like she checks the records. I stood and handed them to the clerk, who walked them to the judge. He read for a full minute, then slammed the file shut with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. "No one moves," he said firmly. "Close the doors." The room froze. Gasps. A ripple of whispers. He turned to the bailiff. "Secure the gallery. This may be moving toward a criminal referral." Jason paled. Melanie blinked twice and sat back like someone had just cut the ground from beneath her. For once, they weren't in control. For once, someone other than me was saying it out loud. They were the problem. The judge looked at me next, his eyes softened, not with pity, but with something sharper. Respect. "Mrs. Halberg, you may be seated. You've made your case thoroughly." I nodded once and sat down slowly, heart pounding, but face calm. Because this was it. Years of support turned against me. Thousands of dollars stolen. My name dragged through court, through church, through whispers and fake smiles. And now? Now the courtroom doors were shut. Now the judge had spoken. And Jason and Melanie were trapped in the very web they'd spun. I came alone that morning. No lawyer by my side. No advocate in the pew. I didn't need anyone to hold my hand anymore. The courtroom wasn't full, but it felt like the air had doubled in weight. Even the bailiff's footsteps sounded heavier than usual. Jason and Melanie sat together, but apart. The space between them, about the width of a betrayal, said everything. Melanie wouldn't look at him. Jason kept tapping his foot like he still thought this would go away with a good excuse. The judge entered, black robe flowing like a final curtain drop. He didn't waste time. In the matter of Jason and Melanie Hallberg versus Ruth Hallberg, he began, voice stern but clear. This court has found extensive, corroborated evidence of fraud, document forgery, financial abuse, and deliberate manipulation of an elderly person for personal gain. Jason's head dropped. Melanie finally looked up, but her eyes didn't hold anything but dread. The judge continued, flipping through the thick binder of evidence. Attempts were made to sell property not legally owned, using a forged power of attorney. Multiple withdrawals from Ms. Hallberg's accounts were conducted under false pretenses. Emergency motions were filed using fabricated medical claims. He looked straight at them now. Each of these actions constitutes not just moral failure, but felony-level criminal behavior. Jason's lawyer stood, trying to stammer out some diluted defense. Your Honor, my client was under the impression. Sit down, the judge barked, louder than I'd ever heard him. Then he turned to the bailiff. Place Mr. Hallberg under arrest. Charges to include felony forgery, attempted fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. Gasps echoed. Jason didn't move at first, not until he saw the cuffs. Then he spun around. Mom, he shouted, panic now cracking through that slick, practiced voice. You can stop this. Just say something, please. I didn't speak. Not yet. Melanie tried to stand, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't forge anything. I didn't touch her accounts, Jason told me. The judge raised a hand. You signed affidavits supporting knowingly false statements. You submitted fabricated hospital records. You participated in financial abuse. This court finds you complicit. 2 bailiffs moved in. Melanie stumbled, heels clacking, mascara already smudged. No, wait, this isn't happening. But it was, exactly as it needed to. The courtroom was silent but alive with tension as they were led out, Jason shouting one last time over his shoulder. You're destroying your family, I stood. Only then did I speak. No, I said, clear, calm, steady. You already did that. I'm just making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. He went pale. I walked toward the exit slowly, stopping beside the clerk's table just long enough to slide a final folder onto the pile. It contained every cent they'd taken, every name they'd lied to, and a signed request for restitution, with interest. As I reached the doorway, I turned one last time to face them. Enjoy your early retirement, I said. It won't be on my dime. Then I walked out, shoulders straight, eyes forward, not needing to look back. Because justice doesn't always come like thunder. Sometimes it arrives in a quiet voice that simply refuses to lie anymore. The headlines came fast. Elder abuse case ends in felony convictions. Mother outsmarts son and daughter-in-law in courtroom showdown. My phone rang for days. Reporters, old friends, strangers from support groups. Some just wanted to say thank you. Jason was sentenced to 5 years in state prison, plus full restitution. Melanie got 3 and a lifetime bar from acting as fiduciary to anyone. Their assets were seized, their accounts frozen, their reputations shattered. One of Jason's old college friends emailed me privately. Never thought I'd say this, he wrote, but I wish my mom had been more like you. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I hadn't won. I'd survived. They thought they could erase me. Instead, I erased every trace of their control. Not just from my home, but from my life. Thanks so much for being here. If this story struck a nerve or reminded you of someone in your life, don't scroll away just yet. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell me, what would you have done in my shoes? And let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the other stories on the channel. You never know. The next one might feel a little too familiar.